On March 15, 2022, something strange happened over the Atlantic Ocean. A large cargo plane, a Boeing 767, disappeared from radar screens for just 27 minutes. When it reappeared, it sent out a distress signal. Search and rescue teams raced to the location. They found pieces of the plane floating on the dark water. The pilot, Captain Wesley Brennan, was gone. It looked like a tragic accident, but this was no ordinary crash. The plane was lighter than it should have been. It was lighter by exactly $32 million in cash. The money belonged to a dangerous cartel, and Wesley Brennan, the pilot everyone thought was dead, had vanished with it. This story is about a man who planned the perfect crime. He did it while flying a massive jet at 35,000 feet. He was a normal guy with a normal job, but one day he decided to do something extraordinary. He decided to rob one of the most powerful criminal groups in the world. The cartel could not call the police. The airline could only report a missing plane. Wesley Brennan used his knowledge of the sky to pull off a heist that still baffles investigators today. He flew into a blind spot and jumped into the unknown, taking a fortune with him and leaving only questions behind. The world heard about a plane crash. Rescuers searched for a body that was not there. They pulled bits of metal from the cold ocean. They believed a professional pilot had met a sad end during a routine flight. But the real story was happening miles away. Wesley was on a boat, speeding away under the cover of darkness. He had outsmarted everyone. He had outsmarted his company, International Air Traffic Control, and a ruthless cartel. He had turned a simple cargo flight into a legendary escape, a modern mystery that began with a single moment of disappearance from a glowing radar screen. The event sparked a massive investigation. But there were two investigations. One was official, led by the FBI. They wanted to know what happened to Flight 847. The other was secret and violent, led by the cartel. They wanted their money back. They wanted revenge. Both groups were hunting for the same man. They were hunting for a ghost. Who was Captain Wesley Brennan? To everyone who knew him, he was just a pilot. He was 47 years old with brown hair turning gray at the sides. His blue eyes always seemed to be squinting, a habit from years of looking into bright skies. He was calm and professional. He was the kind of person you would trust to fly a plane. For 8 years, he worked for a company called Skybridge Freight Solutions. He flew cargo from Miami to Europe. He had a perfect safety record. His bosses called him reliable and efficient. He was the last person anyone would suspect of planning a daring crime. Wesley lived a simple life. He had a small apartment near the Miami airport. He was divorced and lived alone. His job paid him about $87,000 a year. It was a good salary, but not enough to make him rich. He did not own expensive things. He had a few sets of clothes, some books about airplanes, and a laptop he used for work. He seemed content with his quiet life. He was a man who followed the rules. He showed up for work on time. He flew his routes without any issues. He was predictable, almost invisible in his ordinary routine. But behind his calm face, Wesley was always thinking. He grew up around airplanes. His father was a mechanic, so Wesley spent his childhood in hangars and on runways. He learned to fly before he could even drive a car. Aviation was in his blood. He understood not just how planes worked, but how the whole system of air freight worked. He saw the gaps in the rules. He knew that in the world of cargo, not every box contains what the label says. He was a man who paid attention to details others missed, a skill that would one day make him a fortune. His simple lifestyle gave him a kind of freedom. He had no wife or children to worry about. He had few attachments to his life in Miami. Wesley Brennan flew the same routes for years, Miami to Amsterdam, then back again. The cargo was always listed as normal things: car parts, electronics, industrial equipment. For a long time, he did not ask any questions. A good pilot learns not to be too curious about the cargo. But then he started to notice strange things. Some shipments were loaded onto his plane late at night. They arrived through side entrances, away from the main cargo areas. The ground crew that handled these special boxes wore expensive clothes and drove fancy cars, far too nice for their salaries. The paperwork for these shipments was always perfect. Too perfect. The boxes bypassed the usual inspections. Wesley saw a pattern. These special flights always went to Amsterdam. His suspicion turned to certainty one night in October 2021. There was a small hydraulic fluid leak in the cargo hold. While maintenance crews worked on the repair, Wesley went inside to inspect the area. He was alone. One of the special containers had been bumped during loading, and its lid was slightly open. He peered through the gap. Inside, he did not see industrial equipment. He saw bricks of cash. They were tightly wrapped in plastic and stacked with perfect precision. There were dozens of them. It was clearly not a few $1,000s. It was millions. Wesley quickly closed the container lid. He said nothing to the maintenance crew or his supervisors. He knew that asking questions about this kind of cargo could end a pilot's career or even their life. Wesley did not act immediately. He was a careful man. He spent the next 3 months doing research. He went to public libraries. He used their computers, leaving no trace on his personal devices. He studied money laundering schemes run by major cartels. He learned how they moved cash across borders using legitimate shipping companies. Wesley began to build a plan. It was not just a robbery. It was a disappearing act. He knew he could not just take the money and run. The cartel would hunt him down. The police would hunt him down. He needed a new identity and a new life. He found contacts on the darknet, the hidden part of the internet. He spent $400,000 on a complete fake identity. Forged passport, birth certificate, social security number. He also needed new skills. A pilot knows how to fly a plane, but not how to jump out of one at 35,000 feet. Wesley started spending his weekends at a skydiving school in Florida. He told people it was a new hobby. He became an expert at high-altitude jumps, the kind that military special forces practice. He learned to land with precision, even at night. Through his new skydiving contacts, he found a supplier for military-grade parachutes. He bought a special rig designed to carry heavy cargo, strong enough to hold his weight and the 700 pounds of cash he planned to take. His plan required more than just a parachute. He needed a way to escape after he landed in the ocean. Using his new fake identity, he bought a 40-foot fishing boat. He hired a small, professional crew of smugglers. He paid them a large sum of cash up front and promised more after the job was done. These were men who knew how to navigate international waters without being seen. Wesley had thought of everything. He was no longer just a pilot. He was a student of crime. The night of March 15th, 2022, was clear. At Miami International Airport, Wesley Brennan's Boeing 767 was loaded under the bright orange lights of the cargo terminal. He watched as the ground crew moved 47 containers into the hold. 4 of them were special. At 1:47 a.m., he taxied to the runway and lifted the heavy plane into the Florida night. At 5:15 a.m., the plane entered the radar gap. It was time. Wesley disengaged the autopilot and began his maneuver. He put on his pressure suit and oxygen mask. Moving with practiced speed, he entered the freezing cargo hold. He quickly found the 4 containers holding the cartel's cash. Using his tools, he released them and began dragging them toward the rear cargo door. It was hard work, but his adrenaline was pumping. He rigged the heavy containers to the cargo parachute system he had prepared. The entire process took him 23 minutes. He had just 4 minutes left. At 5:41 a.m., he went back to the cockpit and activated the controls to open the massive rear door. A deafening roar filled the plane as the air rushed out. The aircraft immediately pitched nose down, just as he had calculated. Alarms blared. Wesley raced back to the open door. Below him was a black, empty ocean. He took a deep breath, clipped himself to the parachute rig carrying $32 million, and stepped out into the void. He was falling through the night sky, a lone figure leaving a doomed plane behind. The parachute opened automatically at 15,000 feet. The jolt was hard, but the rig was stable. Using a GPS device, he steered the canopy toward the coordinates where his hired boat was waiting. The ocean was rough with large swells. He hit the water hard and was briefly pulled under by the weight of his gear. But within minutes, the smuggler's boat was beside him. They hauled him aboard, then expertly recovered the 4 waterproof containers of cash. As the sun began to rise, Wesley Brennan watched from the deck as search planes started to fly over the horizon, looking for him in the wrong place. The first sign of trouble was silence. Air traffic controllers in Scotland expected a call from Flight 847. It never came. A massive search and rescue operation was launched immediately. They found a wide debris field. Pieces of the Boeing 767 were scattered across the water. They searched for 8 days, but Captain Wesley Brennan's body was never found. The FBI soon got involved. Special Agent Rebecca Hartley led the case. Salvage crews recovered 43 cargo containers from the ocean floor. The flight manifest said there should have been 47. Mendoza cartel representatives were waiting in Amsterdam. When the shipment never arrived, they grew suspicious. Her team discovered the missing containers didn't hold industrial parts. They found vacuum-sealed packaging floating miles from the crash site. The same packaging cartels used to transport cash. The cartel's hunt turned violent. Enforcers interrogated suspects. Enforcers tortured anyone connected to the flight. A cargo supervisor was found dead. A customs official was found dead. Another customs official was found dead. A third customs official was found dead. Both the FBI and the cartel raced to find Wesley. But he'd planned his escape too well. His fake identity was flawless. He left no financial trail. Years have passed since Flight 847 went down. Today, Wesley Brennan remains a ghost. The FBI investigation is officially a cold case. They have no new leads. The Mendoza cartel also eventually gave up the chase. Some sources said he was hiding in Southeast Asia, but every lead went cold. Many questions about Wesley Brennan are still unanswered. Is he living a life of luxury on a remote tropical island, or is he constantly looking over his shoulder, still afraid of being found? Some even wonder if the cartel did eventually find him and delivered their own quiet justice, leaving no trace behind. The story of Wesley Brennan fascinates us because it is a tale of the ordinary man who did the unthinkable. He was a quiet, rule-following professional who broke all the rules in the most dramatic way possible. Captain Wesley Brennan became a modern legend, the man who fell from the sky with $32 million and disappeared into thin air. He remains the ghost of the Atlantic, a mystery that may never be solved.